Today I'm going to be reviewing the Dunu ZEN, a single dynamic driver IEM that comes in at $699. Now, the Dunu ZEN has driver technology that's based off of the Dunu Luna, but if you remember, the Dunu Luna was $1,699 and considered to be one of the most technically capable single dynamic driver IEMs available. So consumers' expectations were set pretty high when they found out that the Dunu ZEN's technology would be based off of that. So does the Dunu ZEN deliver? We're gonna find out right now here on Audio in Reviews. Okay, so before we go over the design and specifications of the Dunu ZEN, I want to quickly go over what's included in the package. Of course, Dunu always includes a very nice assortment of accessories when you purchase their IEMs. They have a very nice assortment of tips. There's small, medium, and large available in each of these three sets here. There's also what appears to be like a medium set of foams. These are a little bit small for me. I do wish they would have included small, medium, and large in the foam as well. I just happen to have some of my own, so I've been using the large that I have. But yes, they do include one pair of the foam as well. Of course, they have their cable, which is their patented quick switch modular system. It has a balanced 2.5, balanced 4.4, and then the 3.5 millimeter standard plug. Also included is a 1/4-inch adapter. You've got the airplane adapter, a shirt clip, and a cleaning tool. You also have this protective pouch here, and their very nice case that they include with the set. Okay, so let's go over the design and specifications. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the specifications, design, isolation, and comfort of the Dunu ZEN. We'll go ahead and talk about the specifications first. These are a single dynamic driver IEM. They have a 13.5 millimeter single dynamic driver. And again, this is based off of Dunu Luna technology. This is technology that they derived from the Dunu Luna. The cable is it has their quick switch modular, their patented quick switch modular system. So you have the option of a 2.5 millimeter balanced end, a 3.5 standard, or a 4.4 millimeter balanced end. This cable is the MMCX connector. As you can see, the cable is very clearly marked left and right. Again, the Dunu cables, I feel, even like with the Luna and the SA6, their cables are class leading in my opinions. As far as overall build quality, the housing of the IEM itself, it has weight to it in the hand, yet it's not heavy in the ear. The cable is soft and supple. And as far as the MMCX connection, it's very secure, feels very solid. And just the overall, again, the build quality of both the IEM and the cable are extremely just well done. Now, as far as comfort and isolation, these IEMs are very comfortable. A lot of people were saying they prefer the comfort of the SA6 over the ZEN. I actually prefer the ZEN over the SA6. These are very comfortable. That's one of the things that I liked about the Luna. The only problem with the Luna was the length of the nozzle. It was a little bit short, so it was hard to get a really good, nice, deep insertion with the Luna, but I loved the fit of the Luna. This corrects that by extending the length of the nozzle. This actually inserts very nicely and nice and deep into the ear canal, so you're able to achieve a really good seal And again, you have I think even better ergonomics overall, even a better fit overall with the Zen. Now, again, as far as isolation, again, these isolate pretty well. It's not the best. It kind of depends on what tips you're using. With the foam tips that I use, the isolation is very, very good. I noticed on some of the other tips, the white tips they include, the isolation wasn't as good. So it does depend on what tips you're using. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the sound of the Dunu Zen. Okay, so before we go into the details of the sound of the Dunu Zen, I quickly want to talk about the overall sound signature, and I also want to talk about a special quality or attribute that not many other IEMs have. So first we'll talk about the overall sound signature. The overall sound signature of the Dunu Zen is what I would consider to be balanced U-shape. So if you look at the treble, what you're going to see is a little bit elevated treble, recessed mid slightly, not quite V-shape, and then elevated bass. Now, the treble, there is roll-off past 10K, but below 10K, what you see is an 8 or 9K peak. So it pushes the lower treble forward. And as you're coming out of the lower treble, what you're going to see is also the upper mids pushed forward also. And then as you come to the mids, again, they're recessed. As you get to the lower mids, they start to elevate, giving the mids kind of a warmth to them. And then going into the mid bass and bass, that is elevated as well. One of the things that stood out to me about the Dunu Zen, if I had to pick one defining characteristic that really stood out to me, it would be its ability to engage the listener right off the get-go. As soon as I put this in my ear, the very first song, one thing I noticed is that there was a physicality and a weight to the notes that not many other IEMs have. And I'm sure that's probably due to the dynamic driver technology that Dunu implemented. But again, that was something that really impressed me right from the very beginning. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the treble. The Dunu Zen does have a fairly relaxed treble presentation, probably due to the treble roll-off after 10K. Now, a lot of the recordings, the live recordings that I use for testing have a lot of air and atmosphere and openness to them. And so that's one of the things, again, I check for when I'm testing trebles. I want to hear that air. I did notice that the treble roll-off does affect that, and some recordings did seem to lack that airiness. However, there's still enough upper treble presence to give a sense of atmosphere and openness. As far as the rest of the treble presentation, cymbals sounded very natural. Hi-hats had good sizzle. There was lots of texture and layering in those treble frequencies, so cymbals sounded really good. The soundstage of the Zen is borderline intimate, but the depth is actually quite good. It has lots of dimension to it. Imaging is excellent, so each instrument and the vocals had a defined space within the soundstage. Okay, so let's move on to the mids. Okay, so now moving from the lower treble into the upper mids, what you're going to see is an elevation right at around 4K, then it comes down just a little bit, then another higher elevation at around 2K. And then past 2K, it starts to dip, And the lowest point of the mid frequencies are right at around 600 hertz, and then it starts to elevate back up into the lower mids, into the mid bass. So going back to that 4K and 2K peak, what that's going to do, those frequencies being pushed forward, what that's going to do is going to actually cause higher notes in instruments like guitars, higher notes in piano, trumpet, stringed instruments, even female vocals to be pushed slightly forward. Now, but not too forward, because the overall frequency, mid frequencies are pretty balanced. And again, I talked about there being good depth. There's still, despite that, there is still good distance between the listener and vocals and instruments. And again, so coming out of the upper mids into the mids, you've got that dip right at around 600 hertz. And so, but it's not too recessed. It's just a U shape. So again, it's not V shape. It's not really recessed. So the overall presentation of the mids, again, is quite balanced. So coming out of the mids into the lower mids, it starts to elevate. And again, so the lower mids, that elevation is just enough to give the mids instruments and drums, toms, deeper tuned snares, some of the higher notes on a bass, some of the maybe lower notes in on a keyboard or synthesizer. It gives those good weight and just a physicality to them. And again, I talked about that attribute that these have, is that sense of physicality. We'll talk about that more as we move into the bass as well. But that lower mid elevation right there, I think, contributes to that overall feeling and that sense of weight and physicality. Okay, let's go ahead and move into the bass. Okay, so moving out of the mids into the bass. Again, we talked about the mids bottoming out right at around 600 hertz. Once you move past that 600 hertz point, it starts to increase. So as you pass 500 hertz, 400, 300, it continues to go up, and into the bass continues to increase. 100 hertz into the sub bass, it peaks out right at around 60 hertz, then it starts to go back down. And again, we talked about this having a fairly, what I consider a balanced U shape. So that balanced sound signature does carry out pretty much throughout the entire frequency spectrum, through the treble, the mids, and even the bass. But there's still a really good amount of bass presence. Now I want to go back and talk about, again, the weight and physicality that these drivers are capable of producing. That thing that really impressed me right from the very beginning. Usually there are trade-offs between BA drivers and dynamic drivers. Rarely do you find an IEM that can deliver both dynamics, slam, punch, and weight, and speed, accuracy, and definition. Typically, you only see the speed, accuracy, and definition in BA drivers, and the slam, weight, and punch in dynamic drivers. Rarely do you see both. There's very few IEMs out there, probably some tribrids and hybrids, they do have both, but those are pretty high-end, pretty expensive. But rarely do you see that in a single dynamic driver IEM. The Luna did have that for me. And again, we talked about the Luna having amazing technicalities, and I also talked about how when consumers heard about the Zen being based off of the drivers in the Luna, my expectations were set kind of high. I didn't expect the Zen to have the same technical capabilities as the Luna, but it was still set pretty high. And wow, they really delivered. Dunu really delivered when it comes to technicalities, especially in the mids and the bass. Again, it's not quite to the levels of the Luna, but it's not a very big step down, to be honest with you. The technicalities of these drivers are really impressive. Okay, so just to kind of recap everything, going back to the overall sound signature, you've got that balanced U-shaped sound signature. You've got that, you do have some treble roll off. So again, that affects the air in some live recordings, but there's still enough upper treble presence to give a sense of openness and atmosphere. You've got that 8 or 9K peak. You've got the upper mids that are pushed a little more forward, bringing some higher notes and instruments and female vocals a little more forward. Then you have that dip in the lower mids, but again, still pretty balanced overall in the mids. The lower mids a little more forward, giving that warmth so that a lot of the middle low warm notes in like toms and lower tuned snares, some higher bass notes, maybe some lower male vocals have a nice warm tone to them. And again, you've got the technicalities, the slam, the punch, the dynamics, along with speed and accuracy in those mids and the mid bass and bass that is, again, not present in very many other IEMs in this price range that are single dynamic driver IEMs. I've got quite a few high-end IEMs right now, and I still find myself very frequently reaching for the Zen over a lot of these other IEMs, again, for that engaging experience that those other IEMs they do deliver, but not as well as the Zen. So I think Dunu did an excellent job with this, and I really look forward to some of their newer stuff that's going to be coming out in the future. I believe, when it comes to single dynamic driver technology, they are kind of pushing the envelope, and they are kind of leading the industry in that area. So awesome job, Dunu. I love the Zen. So when Dunu announced that they were going to be releasing the Zen and that it would be coming in at around $699, I couldn't wait to compare it to the Dunu SA6. And I know they're completely different driver technologies, and the Zen comes in at a little bit of a higher price point, but I still think it warrants comparison, given the fact that many believe the SA6 to be one of the best IEMs in the $500 price range. So I was really, really impressed with the SA6, and it quickly became one of my favorites. This thing is just, the design is beautiful, it's very comfortable, and just an overall excellent IEM. So again, I was excited when I got my hands on the Zen to be able to compare the two. Now, I will say that when it comes to overall sound signature and tuning, I do prefer the SA6. However, I find myself, again, reaching for the Zen more frequently. And the only thing, again, that I can attribute that to is its ability to engage that weight and physicality to notes that the SA6, again, it has, but it's just the Zen does it better. And even though you do have a little more air and sparkle, and the overall better tuning in the SA6, there's something about the Zen that keeps me coming back to it time and time again. And so I'm kind of torn. I'm kind of torn between the two. I love them both. And I still go back to the SA6 quite frequently. I guess the bottom line is these are both amazing IEMs. If I had to absolutely pick, if I could only choose one, I think I would opt for the SA6. But man, that would be a tough choice because, again, I love the engaging attributes of the Zen. This thing is absolutely incredible. So I want to thank all of my subscribers, my new viewers. Please like, please share this video. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have an awesome day.